Hey friends, Chubby Meeple back with another Kickstarter preview for you. Today we're going to take a look at Brains. Now Brains is the third game in the Treasure Hunter series of card games from Jellybean Games. Let's jump to the table. We'll give you a look at this zombie-themed entry into the series, and then I'll jump back here and give you my thoughts. Brains is a simple card game for 2 to 5 players, where players will be competing to collect treasures in order to be the first to score or exceed 21 points. First, give each player a face-up gravestone. Then, deal 4 cards face down to each player. Deal 1 card face-up to each player's graveyard, and do not activate any abilities on these cards. You are now set up and ready to play. With play beginning, the player who most recently ate will take the first turn, and then play will continue clockwise. Let's take a look at gameplay. On a player's turn, that player has 3 options. They can either play a card from their hand, they can draw a card, they can draw 2 cards from the deck, or they can choose to bury the top card of their deck, adding it to their graveyard. The first option is to draw 2 cards from the deck. Doing so, you simply draw the top 2 cards of the deck and add them to your hand. That completes your turn. The second option is to play a card from your hand. When playing a card from your hand, there are several ways you can play it. One option for playing a card is to play the card for its treasure value. Let's take a look at a card and discuss what the layout of these cards mean. First of all, the number on the card is the treasure value or the point value. In this case, if we were to play this card for its treasure value, we would play this card face up in front of us, and we would score the 5 points. And your play area is an ongoing path to points. There's no score track or anything like that to keep track of. You simply keep track of the points that are in your play area. And again, the first to 21 or over is going to be the winner. So that is how we could play this particular 5. The other way that we can play cards from our hand is to play them for their action. So playing this 5 down is to play for the treasure. If we wanted to play a card for its action, we would need a card that has these lightning bolt symbols on it. And these cards generally also do not have treasure values, though there are cards in the deck that can be played for a treasure or its action, but not both. This particular card, the Queen, must be played for an action. It does not have a treasure value. This simply means we're going to place it in the pit, which is an area face up near the deck, and then we're going to activate the ability. In this case, we're going to draw 2 cards, and then play the top card of the graveyard as a treasure. So we would play this card down, we would draw the top 2 cards of the deck and add those to our hand, and then we would get to play the top card of our graveyard as a treasure. So that would pull 9 points into play. So that is another way that we can play a card. The other thing to point out with some of these cards is some of these cards have gear icons on them, and these indicate ongoing effects. So for example, with this guitar, this card gets played as a treasure, and it's worth twice as much as the top card of your graveyard. So we just pulled this 9 off of our graveyard, played the Queen, we drew 2 cards, and we pulled the 9 out of our graveyard into the play area to make it worth 9 points. If, however, we left this card here, and we simply played the guitar down, we'd play the guitar. This guitar is worth twice as much as the top card of the graveyard. So this guitar is now worth 18 points. And there are things that our opponents could do, by throwing other cards on top of our graveyard or making us discard this card that would affect that. But having 18 points out of a needed 21 to win is pretty impressive. Some icons, some gear icons, indicate or are ongoing effects that take place while the card is on top of your graveyard. So this particular card, this blue gear symbol with the tombstone, means that this card, while on top of the graveyard, you need 10 fewer points to win. So if the plunger is on top of our graveyard, we need to score a total of 11 points or more with this particular card. And there are also gear symbols, like the one we saw earlier with the wrench. When the wrench enters your graveyard, so as immediately when it enters the graveyard, then you get to discard any 1 treasure from play. And this is a one-time effect that triggers only when the card enters the graveyard. So those are the ongoing effects that you'll notice. The third option that a player has on their turn is to bury a card. When burying a card, you simply take the top card of the deck, you flip it face up, and you place it on top of your graveyard. So if we take this card, we place it on top of the graveyard. First of all, our guitar is now worth less because we chose to do that, so now this is only a 6-point guitar instead of an 18-point, but I'm just demonstrating the actual play. This card also has one of the ongoing effects that says while this is on top of your graveyard, you draw a card at the end of each of your turns. This is something that you don't normally do. Normally, you actually have to make the decision to use your turn to draw cards, because you don't normally get to draw them. But in this case, we chose to bury. This player would take a turn either playing a card for a treasure, an action. They could also bury a card, or they could simply draw 2 cards to add to their hand. This player would do the same, and then when it came back around to our turn, we would take our action, and then we'd be able to draw a card as long as this 3 remains on top of our graveyard. We'd get to draw a card at the end of our turn. Play is going to continue clockwise around the table with players alternating turns, either drawing cards, playing cards, or burying cards, until one of the players at the table has 21 points or more at the start of their turn. That player is declared the winner. So that is Brains. Again, it's the 3rd edition, or the 3rd entry into the Treasure Hunter series of card games. So you had the pirate version of Scuttle, followed by Ninjitsu, which is obviously ninjas, and now we have Brains, the zombie version. Very quick little games, draw cards, play cards, and there's some new mechanics that this one introduces. It introduces the bury mechanism, so you can take a card off the top of the deck blindly, throw it face up on your graveyard, and hope it does something good for you. So there's a little bit of a push your luck randomization element that gets added in this version of the game. Very easy to learn, very easy to teach, very quick to play. Just like Scuttle and Ninjitsu, I would say, honestly, of the 3 of them, I think Ninjitsu is probably my favorite. I love the aspect of the hidden treasures, but we're talking about Brains. Brains introduces the bury mechanism, which is very good. It gives you that opportunity because you have to, if you're going to win the game, you have to start your turn with 21 points, or 17 if you're playing with 5 players. But the aspect of having to start your turn with those number of points, it gives your opponents the ability to play cards to make you discard treasures. Maybe one of them plays cards to get up to a certain number of points as well. But the bury mechanism really adds an element of, even if, let's say the player to my right has just hit 21 points, I have a chance to do something to reduce their point total down. I look at my hand of cards and I don't have anything in my hand that can help. I could bury a card off the top of the deck, and it might be something that helped me. Maybe I bury that number 5 wrench card that lets me discard a treasure from play. Now I trash one of that player's cards, and I've prevented them from winning, giving myself a chance to get to that 21 points. I really like that aspect of it. The artwork in this game, despite the fact that the quality of the cards and everything that we have are prototype, and what you were seeing are prototype cards, and there may be some slight tweaks with language and those kinds of things, art is pretty much final. It matches very much the same style that you are familiar with Scuttle and with Ninjitsu, the gorgeous art of Kelly Jo, so just the cute little cartoony art. Does a great job of portraying how light of a game this is. But I like a game that I can pick up, I can shuffle a deck of cards, I can deal a hand of cards to players, and we can dive in, we can be done in 10-15 minutes, we're done with the game, we can shuffle it up, we can play it again. It's a great little game to take along travel. It's a great coffee shop game. I've played a lot of not only Brains, but also Ninjitsu and Scuttle just sitting at the coffee shop, because they don't take up a lot of table space. They're quick, they're easy and easy to transport. So definitely, if you're familiar with Scuttle, if you're familiar with Ninjitsu, Brains is definitely a good addition to the lineup. It can be combined with both of those games, plus you have all of the expansions with the diseases and the weather and all those expansions that have previously come out. Brains works with all of those, and in fact the rule book for Brains gives you information on how to incorporate those previous expansions. But definitely, if you're into the Treasure Hunter series and are enjoying those games, the quick, light, family weight gameplay, I would definitely recommend picking up Brains and adding that to the collection as well. And until next time, keep gaming, friends.